Chærete friends, welcome to Classics in Color, your weekly dive into some of the ancient world's wackiest facts. I'm Mark Graves, and today I think is going to be a bit more of an informal video because I am just going to walk us through some of the dirtiest, filthiest poems in Latin literature that also happen to kind of be some of my favorites. So just fair warning, there's going to be lots of foul language ahead. If you would like to keep your concept of the ancient world and of ancient authors and poets on a nice white marble pedestal, now would be the time to click off because we are going to smack them right off. There was just as much color in the ancient world as there is anywhere today in the modern world, and the MO of this channel is kind of to find and appreciate those very pungent bits of color. Like I said, I think this is going to be a little bit more informal, a little bit more meandering than some of my other videos typically are. I've just had this bank of filthy poems that I've kept basically just in a Word doc on my laptop for forever. And I think they're all hilarious. I love them very much, but I haven't been able to think of a way to organize them or to insert them into other more themed, structured videos that I've been doing. And hopefully at some point I will be able to incorporate them into videos as they kind of fit in, but I don't want to wait anymore. They're kind of going to waste just sitting there, so here we go. First of all, Martial, okay? For those of you who aren't familiar with Latin poetry, Martial is a Roman poet who is not like Homer. He does not write big epic stories that are about gods and heroes and all that great stuff. He focuses on small little poems that just ruthlessly mock Rome's upper classes. So whether that's their ridiculous luxury or their recent sexual escapades or the fact that someone just got a really bad and obvious dye job, he's just relentlessly poking at that stuff. So he's an amazing goldmine for all kinds of good content, and he's going to be the main focus for this video today. Most of the poems are written by him. I think it would be good to start with epigram 35 because in this poem, again, all of this is very like tongue-in-cheek, but he is justifying why he uses so much filthy language and addresses so many crass, I suppose you could say, topics in his poetry. So I'm going to read it out and then I'll explain some bits that you may not be familiar with. So just be patient if it's not totally making sense at first. Cornelius, you grumble that I write risque verses, not the sort a schoolmaster would dictate in class. But these little books are like husbands with their wives. They can't please without a cock. You might as well tell me to sing a wedding song without using wedding song words. Does anybody put clothes on Flora's festival or allow whores the modesty of the matron's robe? There's a law laid down for merry verses, and they can't be good for anything unless they itch. So please put prudery aside and spare my jests and jollities, and don't try to emasculate my little books. There's nothing uglier than a neutered Priapus. So I think a lot of the arguments he's making there make sense without me having to explain them, but let's unpack some things that maybe have a little bit more to them. First of all, we run into the wedding songs. So Roman marriage tradition, there's a lot there. We're not going to address all of it, but one part of it is that the groom and a whole bunch of his friends and family will leave from his house and they'll march through the city and they'll get to the bride's house. They'll pick up the bride, sometimes physically carry her back to his house. And during this time, they're carrying torches and singing songs. And this is supposed to be a bit of a reenactment of the stealing of the Sabine women, which was something that happened, in Rome's legendary far gone past, basically. So it's just a very old tradition, or at least the Romans think it's very old. But as they're singing all these songs en route while they're marching, a lot of these songs are going to be very joking. They're going to be basically roasting the groom and sometimes the bride as well. A lot like a best man or a bridesmaid's speech, basically. And often there will be like little innuendos and stuff about what they're about to do in consummating the marriage. So there'll be all kinds of like sexual references and stuff. So it's can be at least very inappropriate, but it's also supposed to be very like good luck for the bride and groom to have this kind of inappropriate or more vulgar joking going on, essentially. And Marshall's whole point is that that's what he's writing too, right? He's writing a kind of poetry that is supposed to be like that, and it's a healthy thing and a good luck thing. It's not like a bad or destructive type of poem. The next line talks about Flora and sex workers. Flora is a Roman goddess of springtime, fertility, good stuff, and she's got a big festival in April. All kinds of things are part of that festival. One of them is that the city's sex workers are supposed to dance around in the nude, naked, right? And they also participate in these gladiatorial fights, but they're more mock gladiatorial fights. So you just have like these naked sex workers like kind of poking wooden spears at each other, I guess. It kind of reminds me, I don't know if they still do this anymore, but how they used to have like a football game for women once a year where they like got up in bikinis and it was supposed to be just kind of like this sexual and also very silly thing. I get the feeling that there were similar vibes for this Flora festival. But anyway, I think what Marshall's point is that you wouldn't put clothes on the naked sex workers on the naked sex worker holiday. That wouldn't make any sense. And also, I don't think sex workers were even allowed to wear matron's clothes. So a Roman matron would be like an adult, married, respectable citizen. She has a particular outfit that she wears, and the sex worker would be either not allowed or discouraged from wearing that. She would wear something else to kind of signal her class and her occupation. So Marshall's whole point is that it would be ridiculous for him to write these epigrams and then not have explicit material and language in them. The final line is, "Don't try to emasculate my little books. There's nothing uglier than a nude Priapus." I'd have to check the Latin, but I am assuming that you could go ahead and translate whatever word is there for emasculate as just castrate. Don't castrate my little books because of the following context. So Priapus is a Roman god of, among other things, fertility and good luck. He's considered like a good luck charm. So you'll have like little statues and depictions of him all over the place, but he's always depicted with a comically and even grotesquely enormous and erect penis. That's just his thing. And Marshall's whole point is that you wouldn't have a good luck statue of the penis god without a penis. Kind of defeats the whole point. Why are you asking me to write these naughty poems without any of the naughty bite to them, without any of the grit? Next up, another poem by Marshall. This one preys on some insecurities that some of us ladies have because it talks about queefing and how much of a turnoff, how much of an ick that can be. Let's read. "Since you have a face which even a woman could find nothing to complain about, since no blemish marks your person, do you wonder why a fornicator so seldom wants you and comes again? You have a serious defect, Gala. Whenever I get to work and we move with mingled loins, your cunt is vocal while you are silent. Would that the gods would make you talk and it be silent. The garrulity of your cunt puts me off. I had rather you farted. Symmachus says that it is healthy, and besides, it makes one laugh. But who can laugh at the smacking of a silly cunt, whose cock and spirits don't droop at the sound of it? At least say something and counter your clamorous cunt, and if you are so tongue-tied, learn to talk out of it." I don't think I've ever said the word cunt that many times in a row, so that felt very weird. I don't think there's much that needs explaining there. I will say that the translation here is pretty clunky. Like a fornicator, who picked that word? There have got to be better options, like lover or hookup or something. I don't know. Something. Anything would be better than fornicator, I think. I feel bad for this lady Gala, whoever she is. I would be mortified. I hope that he gave her like a code name and this wasn't her actual name. Oh my goodness, that would be humiliating. But yeah, I'm interested to hear what you all think about that one. Our next poem, I think, is particularly interesting. It gives you kind of a neat insight into the complicated world of Roman sexuality. But it's addressed to a eunuch who is named Baedicus, and it's mocking him, of course. What is it mocking him about? Apparently, Baedicus has a real skill and a real love of going down on ladies, shall we say. So let's read. What concern have you, eunuch Baedicus, with a feminine abyss? That tongue of yours should be licking male holes. Why was your cock cut off with a Samian shard if you were so fond of cunt, Baedicus? Your head should be castrated. You may be a eunuch loin-wise, but you cheat Sabella's rights. With your mouth, you're a man. There is a lot going on here that I could unpack. I've made several videos about Roman sexuality and sexual dynamics before, so I'll just recommend those if you really want the full story. But briefly, Roman sexuality is not so much about gay versus straight, it's more about tops and bottoms. So adult men are tops and everybody else is a bottom, and if you have sex, it's supposed to be between a top and a bottom. It would be weird and taboo for two adult men to have a sexual relationship. It would also be weird and taboo for two women to have a relationship, not so much because they're both women, but because they're both bottoms. And there's a whole lot more we can unpack there, but just very broadly, that's the deal. So what's weird here is that we have a eunuch who would be a bottom, not bottoming to a man, but bottoming to a woman and having a real preference and a real passion for that. And also just cunnilingus in general, going down on a woman would be a weird taboo thing that would be weird for anyone to do, man or woman. Next up, we have the reference to Sabella. And again, there's so much to unpack here. I'm going to try to just give us a general overview so we can get the reference. Sabella is a very old goddess the Romans have a healthy respect for, but they're also kind of afraid of. She's from the Middle East, so she's not originally Roman. She's imported later. She's a mother goddess, and her priests/priestesses are all men who have castrated themselves. And they typically dress in a feminine manner, and sometimes they even just dress as women, do their hair, makeup, all of that. So there's a very interesting discussion to have here. Would we consider these trans people or cross-dressers, or what is happening here? There's no way for us to know for sure, so it's just sort of interesting to speculate on. But anyway, they are definitely people that violate the Roman norms when it comes to sex and gender and sexuality and all that. They're definitely very other and very weird for the Romans, although they do tolerate them. So you have a person who maybe a Roman wouldn't quite consider a woman, but they're, almost kind of very feminine, who is all the time having sex with other women. And so there would just be so much about that dynamic that would just be very weird and edgy and all of those things to a typical Roman audience. Speaking of fetishes, our last poem from Martial is epigram 34, and it is addressed to a lady named Lesbia, and we are making fun of her for apparently having a bit of an exhibitionist fetish. Let us read. Lesbia, when you turn your tricks, you don't hide them. The doors are always open and unguarded. A spectator gives you more pleasure than a lover, and you have no use for joys concealed. A prostitute, on the other hand, drives witnesses away with curtain and bolt, and rarely does a chink gape in Sumemius's brothel. Learn modesty from Chione or Eos, if from nobody else. Even dirty whores take cover in tombs. Do you find my strictures too harsh? I am not telling you not to get fucked, Lesbia, only not to get caught. So this gal Lesbia is getting some and is making no effort to hide the fact that she's getting some. And Marshall's whole thrust, I guess, is that, look, even sex workers will close and lock the door because they don't want people watching for free, right? They want to pay, they want them to pay for the show. I think the one thing that does need explaining is the reference to the tombs. So sex workers are not all the same. Obviously, some of them work freelance, some of them work in brothels, and there are some that are very high class and expensive, and there are some that are not, right? That cater to the lower and the working and the broke classes. And Rome's poor, especially homeless, tended to shelter in public spaces, especially the Roman cemeteries, right? The graveyards, because you've got all these big structures around that you can kind of take shelter in. It's also kind of a green space, so you can forage for like herbs, maybe even like plant a little veggie garden there. So it's kind of a place that is known for homeless people hanging out. And also, I guess some of the like lowest class, cheapest sex workers would also kind of hang around there and use the tombs and the structures to kind of get some shelter as they're having sex with their customers and not doing it just completely in the open. So the thrust of the argument is that, hey, even like the lowest class, cheapest prostitute knows to not have sex totally in the open. Can you please like at least live up to that standard? Saying goodbye to Marshall, let's take a look at Catalus, who is an equally naughty boy. So Catalus is also a Roman poet, and he's most famous for his love poems. So he wrote a ton of love poetry to his various paramours, and some of it is very like happy and sweet, but a lot of it is very like sad and angry and whiny, and it just reminds me of like every toxic breakup pop song that you've ever heard and like jammed out to. So basically what I'm saying is that Catalus is a ton of fun. But this poem that we're going to look at, Catalus 32, is actually relatively happy, relatively positive. It's addressed to his girlfriend Ipsatilla, and it's giving me like booty call vibes. So it's very much giving like you up energy. I entreat you, my sweet Ipsatilla, my darling, my charmer, bid me come and spend the afternoon with you. And if you do bid me, grant me this kindness, that no one may bar the panel of your threshold, nor you yourself have a fancy to go away, but stay at home and have ready for my 9 consecutive copulations. And bid me come at once if you are going to at all, for I'm on my bed after lunch, thrusting through tunic and cloak. So again, it's very like, hey gorgeous, hey beautiful, like, you up, girl, like those types of vibes. And then if you don't get at the end, he's saying that, you know, he just ate lunch and he's laying in his bed and he has nothing better to do. And he's basically like humping the pillow, like he's masturbating, but he's like not even bothering to take his pants off. So he's like, hurry up and get me over there. Finally, we're going to wrap this video up by looking at Catalus number 58. This poem is not particularly worse than anything we've read so far. It really isn't. What makes it stand out to me is the fact that this poem is printed in Wheelock, which is the Latin textbook that I am required to use in all Latin courses that I teach, which is fine when we're talking about my university courses, because I teach like Latin 101 for freshmen. They can handle it. But I also teach an online course that is for middle and high schoolers. So that's just kind of awkward that this poem is in there. Now, obviously, I don't assign it to them, and I don't think any of them are like going out of their way to do extra homework and translate this one. But it just makes me a little uncomfortable that it is there. Now, even if they did translate it, it is possible that they like would miss, like they wouldn't understand what was happening or being referenced. But it's still very suspicious. My Lesbia, you alone Catalus loved more than himself and all his own. Now in the crossroads and alleyways serves the filthy lusts of the descendants of lordly-minded Remus. So Lesbia is Catalus's most famous girlfriend. She has dumped him. He's very angry about it, so he's going around saying nasty things about her, right? She's for the streets, all that stuff. She's, wandering around on street corners and alleyways, being a whore, right? But this translation says, serves the filthy lusts. Okay, the Latin there is glubit, and glubit means to like strip or to peel something. Roman men are uncircumcised. And the beauty standard for Roman men is to have as long as possible foreskin, basically. You want it really long and taper to a nice point. And so the Roman, typical practice is that you actually kind of stretch out the foreskin and then you tie it. So it's just to encourage it to get as long as possible. And it's also supposed to keep the head of the penis covered. Romans and Greeks have no problem running around naked. They love, having their penis and their balls flap around willy-nilly, but they do actually consider it kind of immodest for the head, the very tip of the penis, to be exposed. So you want to pull the foreskin over that and keep it covered. So, Lesbia is going around stripping or peeling back the foreskin of the sons of Romulus, or just Romans. So again, I have no idea what the editors were thinking when they threw a poem about hand jobs into the middle of my textbook, but it did make me laugh, right? When I first read that, I was definitely surprised. So I'm interested to see what your guys' reactions and comments are on this video, and a little bit scared too, I will admit. But thank you so much for checking out this video. Special thank you as always to subscribers and to Patreon members, and I hope to see all of you again next week. Χαίρετε.